times. But thank you very much to the Chair, distinguished guests on the panel. Thank you very much to the India Smart Grid Forum also for the opportunity. And some nice perspectives from what's happening in India and some really challenging questions about how do you really make the change happen, and what's the status of the industry in that regard, and how do we get there? What's the strategy? I wanted to start though by just building on what we've heard about what's happening in India and saying, well, I represent the part of the UK based here in Delhi that's looking at how we collaborate, how we work together on all aspects of energy and climate change. And there's a clear reason why we're here working in India, because we recognize that amongst these big drivers of transition to cleaner energy, to cleaner transport, we recognize things like energy security. We heard the points about reducing dependency on expensive imports, about creating more livable cities, though, as well, and tackling air pollution, as well as building the kind of industries and jobs of the future, creating these kind of low-carbon industries and jobs that we all want to see, as well as boosting our commitments to climate action. Those are some of the drivers, and those are the things I think that the UK shares with India. We both believe that all of those things are important, they're all things that we want to try and achieve, because we know that they'll be good for our growth path. They'll make our growth path more sustainable, and it also helps us to deliver on the kind of commitments we want to see to really push forward global climate action, which is such a big priority for both our countries. Certainly this year is a big year of climate action. Our Prime Minister set this out as the challenge for this year. We'll be hosting the COP26 Conference of the Parties, and my colleague will speak more about that later. But these are all big drivers for action. And I think what's clear in that scenario is both the UK and India are actors. We're both taking action. We're trying to make change in our own ways. We're trying to find solutions to similar challenges. And we share some similar commitments to transforming our transport sector. So although some of the conditions are different in our two countries, there's a lot that we can learn from each other. And I guess the message I wanted to emphasize is that we certainly believe that we're going to go further and faster in our transition if we work together with like-minded partners like India. And there's some fantastic work happening on that. There's fantastic work happening in both our countries. We've heard a bit about what's happening in India. There's a huge amount happening in the UK. Because we've made this commitment now to go to net zero emissions by 2050. So that leaves us no choice. We have to change every part of our economy. We have to re-engineer our economy. We've made a lot of progress on areas like on energy and power, but transport is a big source of emissions. So how do we deal with that? We've really made a clear commitment to making change. So that's of interest to our counterparts in India. We're really keen to work together on some of those solutions. So I just wanted to set out a few of the ways in which we're doing that, because it spans a lot of the partnership work we have in India on energy, on our urban partnerships, and also on our tech partnerships, how we work together on technology. So a couple of things I wanted to flag was the work we do on knowledge exchange, the work we do together on innovation, on joint investment, and also what we do to try and work together through the kind of lens of technical assistance collaboration. So first of all, on knowledge exchange, I mean, we heard from our partners EY that there's been work in states. It's been a combination of working at state and national level. There's been a really vibrant exchange of ideas between India and the UK that we've helped to facilitate over the past year. And that's been people at policy level talking about policy, regulatory environments, what seems to work, what are we experimenting with, but also at the level of innovation. We actually have a very vibrant supply chain in the UK spanning everything from lightweighting in materials to battery innovation, to looking at how you develop smart chargers, how you put the whole picture together and have smart grids feeding into electric vehicles. And I think there's been a real meeting of minds there with people at the very technical level right through to the policy level, just getting together and talking about what seems to work, what looks promising. And as part of that, we've had a really great exchange of delegations coming through a range of states in India, talking to the national bodies here, and all, on the reverse side, going back to the UK, and not just talking to people, but actually going and seeing real things. And it was a real privilege to join some of that work, some of those delegations. And a high point for me was traveling around the city of Nottingham in the UK with an Indian delegation. Now this is one of our, what we call our Go Ultra Low cities. It's a city that's engaging in a national initiative to how you really try and push forward ultra low emission approaches to transport. And as a way of seeing what we were doing in the UK, we used low emission transport to get around the city. So we traveled in electric taxis, on an electric tram, on an electric bus, and we saw how charging stations were being put in as part of open public spaces. We talked to some of the public workers, right down to people who clean the streets in Nottingham, that are now doing that using electric vehicles. It was a really great, real experience for seeing how is a city really trying to get to grips with this transition to electric mobility. And we've got a long way to go still, but we're taking, I think, some really good progressive steps, and it was fantastic having that kind of a journey together with great Indian counterparts from different states, from different parts of the system, to witness what we're doing and to share thoughts about that. So our knowledge exchange work is really going great guns. And as part of that, we're already seeing concrete partnerships emerge, and one I'd like to flag was the new partnership by the UK smart charging company EO Charging, which as a result of this knowledge exchange made great contacts in India and has now announced that they're going to start making and distributing their smart chargers in Pune, which is a fantastic outcome, as well as the kind of knowledge exchange between governments and between cities and states. It's about getting our great businesses and innovators together and seeing how they can build concrete partnerships. So that's really been at the heart of the work, but also we've had high-level visits. We had the Prince of Wales come towards the end of last year. He was delighted to see how EV startups, innovators and entrepreneurs are helping to sort of steer the early steps towards the realization of India's electric vehicle ambitions. He had a ride in an electric three-wheeler with a female driver who'd been specifically trained, was getting a new livelihood as a result of some of these initiatives. It was fantastic. He was really mobilized by that. So as well as these kind of initiatives, we've also got innovation partnerships. We've got a technology partnership which has launched an innovation challenge fund, which is going to advance academic and business collaboration between the UK and India, looking at solutions, and that's putting out for potential bidders to access funds for proposals that they can then work on for a couple of years. So a really vibrant exchange on innovation. We've also got investments that we do together. We actually have a green growth equity fund set up under the National Infrastructure Fund in India, and that's blending funds from the Government of India and the Government of UK to look at how we can try and stimulate investment in green initiatives, green technology, and that includes work on clean transport, electric mobility. So there's work on investments, and then going forward, we're really keen to try and do more together. So coming out of all the scoping work that we were doing over the last year, all these conversations we've been having in states and with cities, that's helped to shape some proposals that we've been putting together with ministries like Ministry of Power, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, that as part of our energy collaboration in areas like power and like renewable energy and storage, we're going to try and look at what the relationships are there with the electric mobility revolution, how we can collaborate on areas like charging. How do you plan charging infrastructure well so you're making good decisions about the investments that you make? How can we look at opportunities to look at how we develop storage solutions, not just for grids, but also for electric mobility? So there's a lot of really vibrant work going on, and we're keen to do a lot more, particularly as we now engage in this path towards COP26 at the end of the year, which has focused our minds. And in the run-up to that, there will be lots of events and initiatives which we really encourage people to take part in. There's great expertise to share and to work together on. We've already made, I think, a really great start, and very keen to do more. So thank you very much for your attention. Happy to take any questions on that.
Daniel, I have a question. Maybe you want to, okay, come in here. So there's another presentation which is being uploaded right now for Mr. Gupta. But meanwhile, Dan, I have a question for you. You mentioned collaboration and knowledge sharing a lot. I mean, this is also has also come from the first speaker. So it seems like there is a lot to be done on this area. You mentioned that there was an Indian delegation that went to the city of Nottingham, the area of Nottingham, and you also talked about, EV, so lightweighting batteries and smart chargers in their applications. So, were there any learnings from this delegation that you would like to pull forward over here? Let's say a couple of points.
Sure. Yes, I think what we learned was that despite the sometimes different context between the two countries, there's a lot of common ground. I think that was a really key message. The fact that we both have been putting together innovative action plans. I think they've been more at the state level. In India, we've got quite an innovative national policy in the UK called the Road to Zero. I think one of the conclusions was the value for us of having a clear policy framework, because then that sets the direction for industry and it helps to create that incentive. I think we also concluded that there was a lot of common ground on the technology side to try and make sure that whatever solutions are created are appropriate and they're affordable. So there was a lot of discussion on how you can adapt technologies, make them affordable, make them appropriate for the Indian context. And there's a lot of partnerships emerging now to look precisely at that on areas like three-wheelers and looking at appropriate charging infrastructure that might work in the Indian context. So I think there was a lot of common ground around the importance of policy, but the importance of creating the environment in which the private sector can do what it does best and innovate and find the space to operate. So I think we found a lot of common ground, but I think what we also recognized is we're at the beginning of a journey, and it's not that we've solved everything. And there will necessarily be a lot of innovation and working out what the right path is. But one thing I've learned from living in India for 6.5 years is that this is an amazing place to study innovation. I think jugaad is my favorite Hindi word probably, and to see that kind of that really inventive approach to solving problems. And we're really proud of the kind of innovation that we foster in the UK. And so I think, again, a learning coming out of our exchange was how much potential there is to work together to really craft the next generation of solutions for e-mobility.
Right, thanks for your comments.
Mr. Bradley, since you mentioned about the Nottingham experiment, like right now they are at the sort of doing it as a pilot, or what percentage of the city public transport is right now running on electric, or do they have a plan for the future, say by what year at least more than 50% of their fleet is going to be EV?
It's a very good point. I don't have specific numbers on Nottingham and the status right now, but what we could see is that there's a very concerted shift, not just in the city council for how they shift their fleets, and they have a substantial amount of fleet now that's electric, but also how they're putting in place bus systems. They already have a tram system, which is how people get around the city, but also thinking about private ownership. And I spoke to lots of people who were saying, we used to have this kind of anxiety about range and thinking about affordability, but as soon as we get into a car, and there are lots of schemes which allow you to trial cars, to get behind the wheel, to even loan a car, or to be part of a pooled car system where you can drive as a sort of shared transport option. What I heard consistently was, as soon as we get behind the wheel, we realize how much nicer it is to drive an electric vehicle. And that's just on the sort of the private ownership side. But in terms of where we're heading, the UK's commitment by 2035 is for all new cars and vans sold to be zero emission. Now, we use the phrase zero emission rather than electric because that's what's driving our strategy. What we care about is what comes out the tailpipe. If there was another technology that achieved that, we would be very open to it. But right now, it's about the
hydrogen cells also.